Now that you've caught up to the current content and faced the dangers of Rageward Gorge, I reckon you're thinking about upgrading your equipment, right? Right. There are many weapons and armors that are available in the Kvaris region, and this video sets out to help you find the ones that are right for you, as well as finding the elusive Blizzardium, which will be important later on. These are the weapons currently available in the Kvaris region. I should say up front, I have not had the pleasure of using most of these weapons, so much of today's discussion will be largely hypothetical. You may notice that I left the Evil Eclipse series out of this picture. Why? Because the Kvaris prep shop that had these weapons closed with the July 5th maintenance, making this weapon completely unavailable. But for the sake of information, these weapons increase potency by 22% and increase natural PP recovery by 100% for 20 seconds after successfully dodging an attack. The first series we'll actually discuss is the Sechatil weapon series. This is an incredibly useful 6-star weapon thanks to its potential, which normally increases potency by 22%, but increases it by an additional 6% when fighting non-boss enemies. This is a very useful weapon to have when you remember that the average Phantasy Star gameplay involves fighting non-boss enemies like 95% of the time. While this weapon is useful when running around areas defeating enemies for drops, its potential especially shines in combat zones, especially during a PSE burst, where an ample supply of non-boss enemies is restricted to a tight area. Higher damage means monsters can be defeated quicker, which means monsters will be able to spawn more frequently, which in turn means everyone will be able to get more experience, meseta, and drops than they would otherwise. Of course, its potential gets weaker when a boss shows up, but I still think this weapon is a worthwhile investment. The next series, Rocks, is unique in that it has a few different potentials across its weapons. To hopefully simplify explanations, I have constructed this simple image displaying what potentials belong to which weapons, using images taken from the Japanese Swiki and Arx Visiphone websites. Weapons in the first row have a 24% boost to potency and recover photon points when you get hit. Weapons in the second column only have an 18% potency boost, but boost critical hit rate by 30% when your photon points are below 50%. Weapons in the third row have a 23% boost to potency and increase offensive photon point recovery when attacking. Because all these different potentials are on weapons of the same series, it is possible to put different potentials on different weapons. How? With a function called multi-weapons. Multi-weapon is a function that allows you to fuse two weapons of the same series into one. When I use it, it's generally to fuse two weapons I like to use into one so that I have access to both weapons but only need to upgrade one weapon. But depending on the series, such as our Rocks, you can have weapons use potentials they don't normally come with. For example, imagine you're a fighter. Weapons of this class tend to eat up photon points faster than people on the internet eat up the latest made-up rumor. The Rocks daggers are perfect for this because it comes with a potential that boosts critical hit rate at low PP. Use this weapon as the main weapon, and for this example, let's use the double saber as the sub-weapon, but you can use whatever other weapon you like to use. By putting the double saber into the daggers as the sub-weapon for the multi, you give the saber access to the dagger's potential, meaning you have effectively created a double saber with boosted crit rate at low PP. You can also flip the script. The saber has the potential that increases offensive PP recovery. If you put the daggers into the saber, then you've got daggers with an increased PP recovery rate. However, Rocks weapons are considerably rarer than the Sechatil weapons series, as they only drop from certain bosses. These charts I obtained from the Japanese Swiki site detail which bosses drop which rocks. However, it's all Google translated, so it may require a bit of dissection. Most Rocks weapons can also drop from one of the two urgent quests. If you can't get one to drop, you can always buy one from the player shop. However, they can sometimes get a bit expensive. But before you go full ham on this series, they do have another use that we will talk about later. The next series is the Seasonal Evil Orbit series, added for the PSO2 10th anniversary celebration. This weapon operates the same as the earlier Evil Eclipse series, except it's got higher stats and a stronger potential. You'll often see them drop from seasonal enemies, but I don't recommend using these. Why? Because you can buy them from the seasonal shop at plus 40 with 4 augments already in tow. And during the event, these weapons are much cheaper to upgrade. So these are currently the most resource efficient weapons to use. If you're watching this video outside the seasonal event, you may want to go back to the Sechta weapons series for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Of course, 6-star weapons are the only weapons you can use. The Kvaris update secretly introduced 7-star weapons to the game with the addition of the Rugged series. I say secretly because no one knew 7-star weapons came with the Kvaris update. It took tons of players across the global and Japanese servers a full day to find out these weapons even existed. A full day doesn't sound very long, but when you remember that people can discover all the game's secrets within mere minutes, a full day is actually a very long time. The rugged weapons are so rare, I'm tempted to say they make shiny Pokemon look common. Like the Rocks weapons, they drop from bosses. This chart may look incomplete, but it looks to have many similarities to the Rocks chart, so I'm guessing whatever Rocks weapon a boss drops, I am led to believe it drops the same rugged weapon. However, do not quote me on that, it's just speculation. Also like the Rocks series, the Rugged series has a bunch of different potentials across its weapons. The top row boosts potential by 25% and generates damage-resistant barriers over time. The middle row also increases potency by 25%, and it reduces PP consumption by 30% when you consume 300 PP. The bottom row has a weaker 19% potency boost, but it can also activate follow-up attacks when you attack an enemy. And just like the Rock series, you can mix and match their potentials by making them into multi-weapons. Of course, if you're lucky enough to get your hands on 2 rugged weapons, not to mention 2 that you actually use, you should consider trying out for the lottery. They're a super rare drop from bosses and they're way too expensive in the player shop, if they're in the player shop at all. There is, however, a cheaper option for your 7-star weapon, but it's going to require a lot of work. The Kaiser weapons are a series that can be obtained from the Rezo shop. This shop needs to be unlocked by completing 2 tasks. If you wish to know how to complete these tasks, I'd recommend checking out my Ragewar Gorge video, which will be linked in the description. It's also a good idea to check out this video because you'll need to go into Ragewar Gorge to get a material you need to get the Kaiser weapon in the first place. The first material you need is a Rocks weapon leveled up to plus 50. Do not bother doing any other upgrades to it as those will be lost when creating the Kaiser weapon. The second material you need is 60 Icicle Cubes. This item drops from the ancient enemies in Ragewar Gorge, which is why you need to go there. The next material you need is 900 Icicle Orbs. These items can be obtained from completing trials and in frozen boxes that can be found in every area in Kvaris except for Lost Central and Ragewar Gorge. The last material you need is 150 Blizzardium. Ah, Blizzardium. A very rare material indeed. Blizzardium can most easily be found on the northern peak of Mount Ihana, but only during snow or a blizzard. Blizzardium can also be found, although very rarely, in those frozen containers we were talking about earlier. 20 pieces are available in the Rezo shop for exchange, and 50 pieces are available in the current seasonal shop. Once you've obtained the required Blizzardium, you should be able to buy your Kaiser weapon. I spoke about it briefly in the Ragewar Gorge video, but just to review, it's got a 17% boost to potency, a 10% boost to critical hit rate, a 10% reduction to PP consumption, and 20% boost to photon blast gauge when attacking. It is indeed a powerful weapon, but there are those out there who believe it isn't. Kaiser has 2 noticeable weaknesses. One is that its level 4 potential only increases potency by 17%, which is lower than even the 1-star weapon that you started the game with. The second weakness, which it shares with the Rugged series, is that it has a very wide damage variance. Variance in New Genesis is essentially a percentage of the max damage. Using Kaiser as an example, if an individual hit has a max damage of 600, its damage can go as low as 300. This minimum damage can be increased by use of augments that increase potency floor, such as Alt Secreta and Dreadkeeper. Each installment increases the minimum damage little by little, increasing your overall average damage. Don't forget that Kaiser has a 10% boost to critical hit rate. It's generally accepted that the game has a base crit rate of 5%, so the additional 10% brings that up to 15%. It may sound small, but believe me, the difference is noticeable. Critical hits use an attack's highest possible damage and increases that by 20%. As for whether or not a Kaiser is better or worse than a 6-star, I bought the Evil Orbit from the seasonal shop, then I enhanced it to max and augmented it so that it was only 0.6% off of my Kaiser weapon. Then I took the 2 weapons to the Crazy Tail Cocoon and did a bunch of battles with each of them. using only uncharged foyer, I think, and no photon flare. The Kaiser weapon's average battle time was 44 seconds, with its fastest time being 42. The Evil Orbit's average battle time was 52 seconds, with its fastest only being 51. So based on this data, Kaiser is indeed better than one of the best 6-star weapons. And I hope this encourages more people to get Kaiser weapons because I spent good resources to get this data. All this talk of weapons is good, but don't forget that the real make or break for your damage is the armor you wear. Kvaris also saw its fair share of new 6-star armors. This first group of 3 is fairly common, but is on the lower end of what you can get. Defroza is defense oriented, Defrozis is power oriented, and Sestato is a mix between the two. Defroza and Sestato can be found in Belugana ruins, while Defrozis can be found in Lost Central. They all come with a 20% resistance to freeze, so they may be worth considering defensively, considering it feels like just about every enemy in Kvaris is able to freeze you one way or another. But the armor worth looking into is this special group of Sestato units. I discussed them briefly during my Rageward Gorge video. There, we talked about using the ones you find in the red containers because they come with an ability that protects you in Rageward Gorge. But you can also find them in the Kvaris Devastator's purple trigger. With 30 hit points, 4 photon points, 2.25% potency to 2 stats, and a 30% boost to stun resistance, these units are like a direct upgrade to the Schwarz units you got from Dark Falls, with the added bonus of making better hybrid builds. But please, for the love of God, resist the urge to use the Belgrand armor you can get from Gigantics. I do not care how seductive the photon point and potency boosts are. All this unit guarantees is that you're going to get frozen and demolished by anything that has an attack. And yes, I realize these have the highest potency boost of all armors currently in the game, but they just turn you into a glass cannon. They're only truly worth considering if you're really good at not taking damage. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting skill checked by one of the many powerful bosses that inhabit the Kvaris region. But if you still insist on using any, I'd say theoretically, 2 Sestatos and 1 Belgrand will give you plenty of good power without making you brittle. Wow, this video ended up being way longer than I thought it would be, and I even took things out while making it. So I'm gonna cut it off here. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for my next New Genesis lesson, where I will teach you how to apply augments and how they work.
Get a load of this!